Welcome everyone to day 3 of our series, You Are How You Worship. And as you know, in the series, we're going through these various elements of historic Christian worship and asking the question, how are these elements important in really training our hearts to glorify God, to enjoy God? And we are finding that when worship elements like this are observed again and again and again, it really does train your affections, as some theologians have said. It trains your heart to beat for God in a way that it wouldn't if we had just worshipped in the most casual, off-the-cuff way. So some of those elements that we're focusing on are down the road, but we're starting on really what's often considered the first element of corporate worship, which is the call to worship. A lot of things can be said about a call to worship. I just want to mention what it may not be the first call to worship in the Bible, but there's a profound one that I see in the account of Moses meeting God at the burning bush. And in that account, God calls Moses to worship, in a sense, summons Moses to the presence of the bush as it's burning, which is the presence of God. And as Moses is summoned into that worship experience, he is also told by God to take off his shoes. And it's an indicator that in that call into meeting God in that worship experience, Moses had to be told that he was stepping into holy territory, stepping into a holy time. A call to worship is a reminder to us that as we approach God in worship, we are stepping into the presence of the holy, into the presence of the God who made the worlds. And for that reason, it's not a casual moment. We come into a worship service very often properly casual. We're rubbing shoulders with people. We're giving people little fist bumps or COVID-style elbow bumps. Someone needs to tell us that as we come into that holy moment of worship, we are entering new terrain. And that's what a call to worship can do. It trains our hearts to realize that we're stepping into a precious other moment in God's very presence. The psalm I'm going to focus on today that gives you another sense of that call to worship is Psalm 5, and I'll just read these last 2 verses of that psalm. Psalm 5, 11 and 12 says, "But let all who take refuge in you rejoice. Let them sing for joy and spread your protection over them, that those who love your name may exult in you. For you bless the righteous, O Lord. You cover him with favor as with a shield." Now, why does that qualify as a call to worship? Partly because what it's doing is it's addressing the worshiper, and it's giving the worshiper a rationale for why they're to begin worshiping. Now, this text says, instead of using the word worship, it uses the word rejoice. Let all who take refuge in you rejoice. And it is answering the question, why should we rejoice in God? Why should we go about saying all these great prayers and songs about God and his goodness and take joy in him? And the rationale in Psalm 5 that's given is that because this is why we worship this God. It's because when we take refuge in him, anyone who takes refuge in him, he protects. Anyone who takes refuge in him, he blesses, the scripture says there. And then maybe most importantly, anyone who takes refuge in God, he covers with favor. In the New Testament, we know that those who take refuge in Jesus Christ are covered in the favor of the Father. The Father sees that worshiper as if he has all the merits and the credentials of Jesus himself. They're covered with the favor that is reserved originally just for the Son. In a call to worship, we're reminding ourselves there's reason to rejoice in such a God like that. So it's a rallying cry to the worshiper where we allow ourselves to hear the words of God saying, "Rejoice in me, and here's why, because I've wrapped you in the favor of my Son."